It was supposed to be a light-hearted evening with friends. We were sitting around the living room, laughing over silly questions and hypothetical games. Someone asked, "If you knew you'd never get caught, what's one thing you'd do?" I smirked and, without thinking, said, "I'd cheat." Everyone laughed, assuming it was just another joke tossed into the night's chaos. But what I didn't notice was my husband, Daniel, standing by the doorway, frozen, holding 2 cups of coffee he'd gone to refill. His smile had faded the moment he heard those words. The rest of the night carried on with laughter and music, but Daniel became unusually quiet. I thought he was just tired from work. When everyone left, he didn't say much. He just said, "Good night," and turned off the lights before I could even explain it was just a joke. I brushed it off, thinking it wasn't that serious. After all, he knew me better than anyone, didn't he? The next morning, Daniel wasn't at the breakfast table. Instead, there was a folded envelope beside my cup. I assumed it was a love note or maybe a letter for work. When I opened it, my heart dropped. It was divorce papers. My hands trembled as I read his short note attached to it. "If cheating is something you could joke about, it's something you've thought about. I deserve honesty, not mockery." I rushed to his office in panic. When I got there, he was calm, almost too calm. "Daniel, it was a joke," I cried. Everyone laughed. "You know me better than that." He looked at me with sad eyes. "A joke reveals a thought, Emily. Maybe you didn't mean it, but it's what you chose to say when you could have said anything else." His tone wasn't angry. It was broken. For the next few days, I tried calling, texting, and even visiting his parents to talk to him, but he had already moved out of our home. He didn't block me, but his silence was louder than any fight we'd ever had. Friends told me to give him time, that maybe he'd calm down. But time only made the distance between us heavier. I replayed that night over and over in my head. I hadn't meant it. I had never even thought of cheating. But Daniel was always serious about loyalty. His father had been cheated on, and I'd seen how much it shaped his views. Maybe my joke had touched an old wound I didn't realize still bled. Weeks passed, and our shared home became emptier. His clothes, his books, his coffee mug, all gone. The silence in the house was suffocating. One afternoon, I found an old letter he'd written to me before our wedding. In it, he'd promised to never make me doubt his love, and all he asked in return was respect and honesty. I realized my careless words had betrayed both. I decided to write him a long letter, not begging for forgiveness, but explaining everything. I told him how much I admired his integrity, how I never intended to hurt him, and how that joke was the worst mistake of my life. I left it with his sister, hoping he'd read it someday. A few weeks later, I got a message from Daniel. It was short. "I read your letter. I believe you didn't mean it. But I can't unhear what I heard. I need to protect my peace." It was his way of saying goodbye. I cried for hours, realizing that sometimes love doesn't end with betrayal. It ends with misunderstanding. Months went by, and I tried moving on. I joined a support group, started therapy, and began to rebuild myself. I learned how fragile trust could be, and how even a single careless word can shake something built over years. Daniel's absence taught me more about love than his presence ever could. One evening, while walking home from work, I saw him across the street. He looked well, calmer, lighter. Our eyes met briefly, and he gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of everything we had been. I wanted to run to him, to tell him I still loved him, but I knew it wasn't my place anymore. Sometimes, I still think about that night and how a moment of laughter turned into a lifetime of regret. I've learned to weigh my words, to understand that jokes can carry truths we don't even realize. Daniel once told me, words can't be taken back, only remembered differently. Now, I finally understand what he meant. I no longer joke about things that matter. Love, trust, loyalty, those are sacred. Maybe one day Daniel will forgive me completely. Maybe he won't. But I've made peace with it. Because now I know, some lessons come wrapped in heartbreak, and some mistakes can't be undone, only learn from. And though our story ended, I'll always be grateful for what it taught me. That even a single careless word can cost you the person who loved you the most.